revealing Iran's intentions when raining firepower on Israel. World gold prices are expected to increase in the context of the Iran and Israel conflict. Iran's raid on April 13, 2024, on Israeli territory was unprecedented. Before that, Iran had never ordered a direct attack on Israel from its territory, not to mention using a series of UAVs and ballistic missiles like this time. Middle Eastern gunpowder barrels are at risk of exploding. An inevitable reaction from Iran. Iran's retaliation against Israel is considered inevitable after Iran believes that Israeli aircraft bombed an Iranian diplomatic facility in the Syrian capital on April 1, killing a top guard general, Iranian revolutionary soldiers, and a number of other Iranian military advisors. Iran's political and religious leaders reacted immediately after the airstrike. Iranian President Raisi accused it of being a most cowardly crime that cannot be ignored. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, used his weekly speech to declare that Israel would be punished. U.S. President Biden's administration pays close attention to Mr. Khamenei's statements. U.S. government employees in Israel have been ordered to stay in major cities. U.S. Secretary of State Blinken spoke with his counterparts in the Arab world and asked them to urge Iran to de-escalate. Meanwhile, the U.S. Department of Defense has dispatched 2 U.S. Navy destroyers into regional waters. At least one of these 2 ships carries an advanced missile defense system. The question is not whether Iran will react, but how. To date, Iran has launched about 200 UAVs, drones, and missiles toward Israeli territory. The possibility of Iran also launching more UAVs and missiles cannot be ruled out. The situation is more tense than ever. Ayatollah Khamenei could not help but retaliate after Iran accused Israel of carrying out a daring attack on its consulate in Syria. From his perspective, doing too little or nothing at all would create a weak image of the Iranian government and could encourage Israel to carry out more attacks to destroy high-ranking officials. They're high in the future. On the contrary, if it acts too strongly, Iran could suffer fierce counterattacks from Israel. The current Iranian army is backward compared to its opponents. Both Ayatollah Khamenei, Iranian President Raisi, and the generals of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard can speak strongly, but they are all aware that Iran is not ready for a large-scale comprehensive war with Israel, the military powerhouse. Leading force in West Asia, not to mention an expanding conflict with the U.S., the world's #1 power today. The U.S. and Israel weigh the risks when responding. Israeli and American leaders now need to consider the risks and gains if Israel launches a counterattack. In case the counterattack plan is approved, they will have to determine how long they will endure a dangerous escalation. This is not a low-cost scenario for the U.S. There are currently tens of thousands of U.S. troops stationed in the Middle East, from Syria and Iraq to Saudi Arabia and UAVs. All of these soldiers are within range of Iranian missiles and Iran's proxy forces. If the conflict spreads, U.S. military bases will be attractive targets for Iran. At that time, the U.S. may not have enough air defense systems to shoot down bullets coming at them from many directions. In January 2020, when the Trump administration assassinated Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in Iraq, Iran had to wait 5 days before choosing how to respond by launching more than 12 ballistic missiles at 2 bases. America in Iraq. This time Iran spent more time, about 2 weeks, considering response options. It makes sense for Iran to consider longer. Iran has many options at hand, from symbolic to escalating tensions. For example, Iran can leverage its proxy network in the Middle East. Iran's standing army is quite weak compared to U.S. and Israeli standards. But Iran has the ability to cause significant damage to its opponents due to its strategic relationship with non-state actors such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, Palestinian militant groups in Gaza and the West Bank, Houthi forces in Yemen and both fighters in Iraq and Syria. In January 2024, 3 U.S. soldiers died in northeast Jordan after militias linked to Iran carried out a UAV attack on a U.S. base there. Besides proxy forces, Iran can also use its intelligence agency to attack Israeli diplomatic facilities or Israeli diplomats abroad, as they have tried in Azerbaijan and India, Thailand, and Georgia a decade ago. What about Israel? On April 11, 2024, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu told Israeli military pilots that the country is ready for war if that is necessary. "We have a simple rule: whoever attacks us, we will fight back," he said. Previously, Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant stated, "We are prepared to defend ourselves both on land and in the air, in close cooperation with our partners. We will know how to react." From Washington's perspective, Iran's attack on Israel is indefensible. U.S. President Biden may be increasingly dissatisfied with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's Gaza policy, but he remains clear that the U.S. stands unequivocally with Israel in the event of an Iranian attack on Israel. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin also said the same thing to his Israeli counterpart in a phone call on April 11, in which Mr. Austin affirmed that Israel can count on the full support of the U.S. The U.S. will likely continue to support Israel if Israel decides to directly attack Iranian territory. However, then there will be a risk of armed conflict spreading to the entire region, something President Biden always tries to avoid, especially given the number of rocket and UAV attacks on U.S. soldiers in Iraq and Syria has decreased in the past 2 months. After hitting an all-time high of $2,400 an ounce last week, gold continues to be the main haven asset for international investors amid escalating conflict in the Middle East. World gold prices are expected to have an increase in the first trading session of the week, due to increasing geopolitical instability between Iran and Israel. After hitting an all-time high of $2,400 an ounce last week, gold continues to be the main haven for investors amid escalating conflicts in the Middle East, financial expert James Hyerksik shared with financial information portal Xempire. Last week, the gold exchange rate against the US dollar XAU/USD remained stable at $2,344.235 US, an increase of 14,075 or plus 0.60%. The week's high reached $2,431.59. According to expert recommendations, derivatives trading has a high level of risk and should only be traded with disposable income. The risk of direct conflict has increased after Iran launched a drone attack on Israeli territory, a significant escalation that marked a direct confrontation between the two Middle Eastern nations. This attack is considered Iran's response to the suspected Israeli airstrike on the Iranian embassy in Damascus, Syria earlier this month, leading to the deaths of several high-ranking officers. The U.S. has responded by hardening its stance on Israel, signaling the possibility of deeper engagement that could escalate tensions. Recent drone attacks as well as fierce arguments between countries have increased instability in the region, causing many investors to turn to gold. The closure of airspace by Israel and neighboring Jordan in response to the attacks has added to instability in the region. Such geopolitical developments often push investors towards the safety of gold, thereby pushing up gold prices. The situation in the Middle East is very difficult to predict and is likely to escalate further. Any new military action or announcement of retaliatory measures is likely to push gold prices higher as investors seek safety amid uncertainty. Market sentiment is currently leaning toward caution, thus prioritizing investment in gold as a safe asset. In the short term and specifically next week, gold prices will likely continue their volatile trend with the possibility of continued upward momentum. Ongoing and potential future developments between Iran and Israel will be important to market trends, with gold expected to remain a popular asset for investors looking to hedge against geo-risks. Politics.